Well, good to see everybody online. We will start the webinar at 1500 sharp, as my dear colleague Maartje says in the chat, which at the same time points out the fact that we have a chat function. So please do use it if you have any questions or points or technical issues. We'll try to help. Any questions coming along as you see the presentations, you can also put them down here. But let me first please welcome everybody, of course, our esteemed speakers at this webinar of the Community of Practice for Reusable Packaging of KIDV, the Netherlands Institute for Sustainable Packaging. And just to show you the agenda we have for today on the, I think, quite exciting and inspiring topic of reusable packaging, as it is at the moment in France, one of the front runners on the topic. We have an interesting lineup of speakers. Just waiting for the next slide to appear. Here we are. So after the introduction of myself, being Marcel Keuyenhoff, one of the packaging technologists at KIDV, particularly specializing on reusable packaging. After that, we will dive straight into the topic with an introduction of our co-organizers for today of Enough Plastic, and one of its founders, François, will give a presentation on the learnings from the French reuse market, the status quo, where are we now, what is happening in France in the nearby future, and what can we learn from that. Followed by certainly an interesting topic that I feel very strongly about, which is the standardization of reusable packaging by Alistair from the Reset Company. And after that, certainly equally important examples from real life, which would be from Xu Zhang of Panda, who happens to also be the president of Réseau Consigne, a network of reusable companies and operators. After that, we will look at the local deposit schemes as they are appearing more and more in France, and they have been for a while, by Nicolas from Bout à Bout. And finishing with the presentations, with a presentation by Ludivine de la Tronchette, who is a CSR project manager at Carrefour, one of the very active retailers in France, as we will know from the Loop project, for example. Well, the idea is that we will have rather short presentations. We might have time for one or two burning questions after each presentation, but the majority of the questions we would come to in the panel discussion, which would be the last 20-25 minutes of today's program. So having told you about the agenda, I very briefly will introduce the community of practice that I mentioned, which is a part of the KIDV, the Netherlands Institute for Sustainable Packaging. And we are part of the EPR structure in the Netherlands for packaging waste. The community of practice that we created about 2019 it was, end of 2019, basically is functioning as a network for anybody interested in or working on reusable packaging. Started as a Dutch network, but rather rapidly grew into a European network and even beyond. There's about 500 professionals connected to the network, working on the topic through physical meetings and webinars that we organize, pilots that we do, tools that we develop. Here's a link to one of our rather useful tools, which is a calculation tool for reusable packaging, which is a bit of news here, and now we'll see an online version. This is the first version is an Excel-based one. We will develop an online version that will be applicable for all of Europe later this year. So that's a very, very brief introduction of KIDV and the community of practice. And with that, I think I would like to ask our first presenter of today, François, if you could switch on your microphone and camera, then I'll do a very brief introduction of yourself. François is one of the founders, as I mentioned, of Enough Plastic, François Chartier-Castler, together with Manon Sénéchal, who will present very briefly the situation of reusable packaging in France. And François, if you could unmute your microphone, and we can test if we can all.
Hi everyone, can you hear me well?
I think we can hear you indeed. So I will
great.
Phone and camera, François, and leave the floor to you. Any questions as you move through the presentation? There's, as I said, or two questions we can do after your presentation, but the majority, I would say, we save for the panel discussion. So that I will switch off my microphone and camera for 10 minutes and 15 minutes, and then the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, Marcel. Thanks for introducing us. So, hi everyone, I'm Francois Chartier-Kessler. I'm the co-founder of the consulting firm Enough Plastic with Manon Sénéchal. And with Enough Plastic, we have the ambition to accelerate the transition to a world without waste. So we mainly support F&B, consumer goods, and cosmetics producers, as well as retailers and hospitality actors in exploring, designing, and setting up distribution models that are based on reusable packaging and on alternative packaging. So I'll briefly introduce the French reuse market. So here in France, until the beginning of the 70s, reusable packaging was widely used. However, the automation of industrial production in the 60s, the arrival of plastic packaging, along with the apparition of mass distribution through retailers in the 70s, have accelerated the emergence of a new distribution model, which is based on linear economy. And it accelerated the packaging innovation in favor of single-use plastic. So for instance, the first plastic bottle in PVC appears in the end of the 60s, and it was more resistant and lighter than a glass bottle. So this led to 1989, which was the year that accelerated this decline of deposit scheme systems in France, because this was the year where the 1938 French law was cancelled, and this French law had made it mandatory to have a deposit scheme on the on-trade segment for beer, water, and soft drinks. So this resulted in an increase in the number of packaging waste created. For instance, from the 60s to the 90s, packaging waste doubled, and this cost of waste management was too high for local communities. So an EPR system was created, an eco-emballage was created. It led companies to financially take part in the waste management process based on the number and weight of the packaging they put on the market. So today the market is very different to the one it was in the 80s. Packaging is now more than ever part of brands' marketing strategy, and it has become a tool to differentiate from competitors. And we also have plastic and cardboard packaging that have largely replaced glass and metal packaging. And plastic and cardboard are usually more difficult to be reused. Yet, deposit schemes are still in place on the on-trade segment. We have 40% of the glass bottles and beer cases that are still reused. We also still have reuse models in the Alsace-Lorraine region in the east of France, where 25 million bottles are reused every year. And this market is led by three major producers, which are Kronenbourg, Meteor, and Heineken. And reuse models also exist in other sectors. For instance, pallets are still reused in the transportation sector, and in the car and chemical industry, some containers are reused between producers and their suppliers. So I'll give you a short overview of the legal environment. So since 2020, the AGEC law, the law against wastage and for a circular economy, has set the groundwork for the emergence of reuse model. So for instance, Article 7 prohibits the use of any single-use plastic packaging by 2040. We also have the Article 9 that states that the number of reusable packaging sold in France compared to the number of single-use plastic packaging sold must reach 5% by 2023 and 10% by 2027. And we also have Article 77 that states that all regular home meals deliveries will have to be packed in reusable packaging by January 2022, and that all foodware used for on-site consumption in the on-trade segment will have to be reusable by 2023. And we also have the Climate and Resilience Law that was voted in August 2021, and its Article 11 states that medium to large retail businesses of more than 400 meters square will have to devote at least 20% of their surface to bulk by 2023. And a last fact is that CTO, the French EPR organism, was also mandated legally to work on standardized ranges of reusable packaging for 3 sectors, which are beverages, fresh food products, and catering. And when it comes to consumer demand, we see that in France, there is a growing number of consumers that say that they want to change the way packaging is currently used. In 2011, 85% of French people said they were in favor of the ban of single-use plastic packaging products. And 88% of them said they wanted to have access to a deposit scheme model so that bottles and packaging could be reused. And it's interesting to see that the same study from ADEME also highlights that 2 types of consumers are more likely to embrace reuse and refill models. On one side, we have the environmentalists. So they care about the environment and aim at reducing their environmental impact. They will usually purchase local, eco-friendly products in bulk or with the least packaging possible in specialized shops like local grocery or organic stores. And we also have the pratico-pratique consumers. So they are not particularly interested in reducing their environmental impact, but they will join a reuse model if they understand how it works, if it's easy to join, and if they can get a financial benefit out of it. And so here's a quick overview of the French reuse actors. So the current French reuse market is regionally segmented, and the association Réseau Consigne regroups these actors. So most of them, like Bout à Bout, work on the B2C side. They collect reusable packaging from end consumers, clean them, and sell them back to producers. We have another actor, Panda, who works on the B2B side. So it enables companies to deliver their food products to one another in reusable packaging. And in order to facilitate the sorting out process, these actors usually tend to have producers use standardized packaging. We also have Loop, another type of reuse actors. It enables national brands to sell their star products through tailor-made reusable packaging. And in this project, each producer can design its own specific packaging. So in conclusion, we see that Loop largely contributed to reintroducing reuse models in France by making them trendy again. And on the other side, we have local reuse operators that show that reuse models can also be financially viable, either for small and very local producers. So France is now in the process of modeling what a standardized reuse model would look like on a national level across several product categories and in several retail stores. So I give the floor to Alistair, who will shed light on why standardization is key to ensure viable reuse models from an economic and environmental standpoint. And you will then have the opportunity to hear 3 complementary testimonies of existing actors working to set up reuse models. So Shuzong from Panda, Nicolas from Bout à Bout, and Ludivine, who will share Carrefour's experience and perspective on Loop.
Excellent. Just if I may quickly dive in between, Francois, because we have 2 questions in the chat that I think we have a minute to answer, if you would be so kind. So I will read out the question from Gina. She is asking about the regular home meal deliveries, which indeed in your overview of the legislation, so the AGEC, I'm not sure if I pronounce it correctly, yes, which is being enforced, as it said, in January 2022. Is that actually the case? Is there enforcement happening that this is indeed being followed?
So from what I saw, but the other speakers might also have more information on this, but from what I saw, the regular meal delivery companies we interviewed didn't yet have a viable model in place. So they are still testing, and so this market is not mature yet.
So does that also mean there is no enforcement from the government, let's say, on this bit of legislation?
At least I think there was no enforcement strong enough to make sure that in January 2022, all of those companies have a model in place.
Okay. This will be interesting looking forward because there are more countries in Europe, the Netherlands being one of them, where 2 or 3 weeks ago we had a new bit of legislation announced that indeed as of, I think, 2024, we have the same for takeaway meals and drinks. So that will be interesting looking forward what happens in France and whether we can learn from that. And another quick follow-up question from Gina, and then we'll give the floor to Alistair indeed. Question is, what percentage of the population would you think considers themselves environmentalists and which ones are pratico-pratique? Just as a, you don't have to answer exactly on the percentage, but what would your feeling be looking at this?
I think at the end, from what we see, it seems that consumers are both, because environmentalists won't be able to enter into projects that cost more on the long run than let's say classic single-use projects. So I think that even if people say they are environmentalists, they will still need to have access to a system that gives them positive financial incentives. But from our experience, I would say that from the projects we saw, we were more in contact with practical consumers that even though they say that they are in favor of environment, practices that have a positive environmental impact, at the end, when it comes to joining a system, they have to find something that is easy for them to join, and that maybe gives them some financial incentives as well.
I would agree. I mean, I would love to ask some follow-up questions. Just, do you see a difference between urban areas versus more rural, et cetera, but I think we can save that for the panel discussion. So for now, I would like to thank you, Francois, for your great introduction, which is the cue for Alistair to open up his microphone and camera. So, thanks, Francois. I'll give a one-sentence introduction of yourself, Alistair, if that's okay, and then you can correct me after I tried to introduce you. So we've been in touch for some time, and you work for the Reset company, which is based out of France, and you, for Reset, are now the Dutch representative, correct?
Yes.
An expert
Goedemiddag to all the Dutch fellows.
So I will close my camera and microphone, and then the floor is yours, Alistair.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Thank you, Francois, also for the introduction. I think this will make a lot of sense also in what I have to say. Just quick word about Reset, maybe before I start. We are a consultancy in the environmental transition through circular economy. So we help companies build circular models, and we've especially worked recently on packaging. We also work in different types of fields such as construction, IT, fashion, and cosmetics. But we've worked extensively on packaging as Reset Packaging, which is on food packaging, was one of our first programs. And also on cosmetics, fashion, and in the southern region of France on reusable models. So different types of reusable models, refill, recharge. There's more in cosmetics and more of return on the go for Reset Packaging. But the reason I'm talking to you about standardization today is that a year ago we were mandated, because of our work in Reset Packaging, by CTO to work on the standardization of reusable packaging. By the way, I don't know if you'll get the presentations at the end, but there are links, clickable links for these documents in the presentation. They're in French, but DeepL is your friend. It is mine in the Netherlands to understand Dutch documentation, so I hope you can do the same. More recently, we've worked on the national 3R strategy. As Francois said, we have very ambitious objectives in France, but we need to build the trajectory to go there. So we helped the Ministry of the Environment and the ADEME, which is the Agency for the Environment in France, to work on the trajectory. So how can we get to zero plastic in 2040? In France, there's a cultural difference with the Netherlands, is that we we have high objectives, and then we need to implement them, and that's why we're here. So as Francois said, reusable packaging in France is not a model that is to be built, but to be rebuilt because we have optimized the linear economy. And as such, we need to work on the optimization of this model. So today, maybe you know this graph from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation on the different types of reuse models: refill, return on the go, return at home. Today, I will be focused on return on the go, as it's the main model we've worked on. So as I was asked to talk about standards, I thought it would be interesting, maybe more interesting for you to talk about why we want to standardize and what implication does it have on the whole value chain, and especially the insights we gathered from working on this for the past 2 years. First of all, why standards? Francois talked about it, but there's a regulatory pressure in France, and that's really, really key in making all the stakeholders move. So CTO was actually mandated, and we work with them and all the stakeholders in the food industry to develop these standards, and that's a very important part. 2 to 5% of their fund of their revenue will be dedicated each year to reusable packaging, which is around 20 to 50 million euros per year. So there's also quite a big economical incentive to do reuse. The other reason is quite obvious. It's also finding an economical and environmental optimum. As we say often at Reset, is that circular economy is as much about environment as it is about economy, and the economic part is often the most difficult one. So our conviction is that reuse can be viable, but it needs to be massified, and it needs to attain certain goals in its optimization in the model. So I wanted to see with you a few key success factors that we identified working on standardized packaging and on reusable models. First of all, economical factors, the number one being the number of rotations for your reusable packaging. So this is the formula to calculate the number of rotations. Basically, you need to maximize your return rate, so the number of packaging that comes back from the consumer, and reduce as much as possible the break and wear rates, so the packaging that you can't use anymore after a return. Then there's the packaging price. Obviously, when you produce food and you need to package your food, the reuse container shouldn't be more expensive than the single-use container. And this is often due to washing costs that need to be optimized. So today, there's obviously an investment factor that comes into mind. So investing in new washing facilities, that obviously costs a lot, but there's also optimization that can be done on labor costs. So for instance, oversorting can be solved by having standardized packaging. So if you have a lot of different packaging coming in, you need to sort them, and this will increase the cost of the reused packaging. There's also the total quantity of product transported. So if you have a reusable packaging, it needs to be sturdier. So obviously the volume and weight can increase, and then you decrease the number of products you can transport per truck or per vehicle. And in turn, it decreases the revenue you can make out of this delivery. And obviously the environmental part, number of rotations, once again, is the key. Often you'll see LCAs compare two packaging with 1 or 2 rotations, but it's important to factor in the time effect. If you have an optimal reusable model, then you will the impact of the reusable packaging will decrease over time, and this in turn will give you a more sustainable packaging over time than the single-use one. And you really need to factor in this duration and the optimization of your reusable model in order to decrease the impact of your reusable packaging versus the single-use one. The transportation distance is less of a problem in the Netherlands, as you already have quite a good last mile delivery system, and it's quite a dense country, and you have less of a distance to factor in. But a study from ADEME, which is the Agency for the Environment in France, proceeded to a radius of around 200 to 300 kilometers between washing, distribution, and distribution and processing. So this is what you need to aim for within your system. Then there's still the packaging weight, which has a great footprint on the whole system. If you go from one material to another, then you really need to do an evaluation of the difference of the weights, because it can be quite big. If you're going from glass to glass or from metal to metal, it's quite easier to implement reuse, as the weight difference won't be as much. Maybe you just need to reinforce your glass packaging in order to do some rotations. And what we see in most of the studies that have been done in France is that after 1 or 2 rotations, very few rotations, it's actually more interesting to have reusable packaging environmentally than single use. Then, as I said, for the economical part, the total quantity of the product you transport will impact your LCA results, as you will transport less functional units per vehicle. So the impact will increase. Lastly, the washing process needs to be optimized. Often what is said about reusable packaging in LCAs is that it gives issues on the water eutrophication and depletion, but there are new washing systems that have closed loops for water and that help in that regard. So our conviction is that we need to go for industrial reuse, and therefore we need to have standardized packaging that can lower costs. You can have economies of scale, optimize transports, and give clearer view to users. So optimize your return rates, and that's one of the main reasons why standardized packaging is interesting. It's also because it's from an economical point of view, it gives you the opportunity to have a better reusable system, which allows you in turn to pool the packaging with other producers, the equipment, including the washing facilities, harmonize practices for returns, logistics, and sanitation, which will allow you to increase your return rates and increase the number of rotations you can do, and have a territorial networking so that you don't have to transport your packaging over too much of a distance. So that's actually what we did with CTO, and you'll be able to check out the full report. It was involving and aligning the whole value chain around these ideas and working on how we could optimize this whole value chain. So for packaging suppliers, it would be producing the right packaging solution. Industrialists would work on their own optimization of their own production lines. For retailers, to find the right return system, deposit schemes, and I think Ludivine is going to talk about it later. For consumers, to communicate well, and washing operators to invest and find the right washing techniques depending on the product and on the type of packaging. So all of that can be found in the report. One thing I want to stress here is also that you can't make this whole value chain move without normalization from the regulatory bodies. So you need normalization for the packaging itself, but also for food safety and for washing methods at some point. And it could be local from an EU perspective. It's something that will obviously come in the future, or from EPRs. A key actor that needs to be highlighted too is the pooler, as it's a system that is in place in some countries. Having a central managing system for the reusable packaging allows you to follow the performance, to organize the deposit system, and to organize where the packaging can go. I just want to leave you with an idea, like a dream that I've been sharing with Marcel quite often, and that I think some of us are already working on today, is that we need to create a European reuse system, or at least something that can be interoperable. As we have a unique market, we need to find a way to make all these reusable packaging goods and services go through our borders. One thing to keep in mind is that you can't copy paste the models. We can't do the German model in France, and you can't do the French model in the Netherlands. And so you just need to have interoperability of the models between one another, so that the packaging that is sold from France to the Netherlands can be washed in the Netherlands, and the other way around. So we have all the pieces of the puzzle. We just have to put them together. I'm glad to answer any questions, and obviously deepen the conversation with all the speakers afterwards.
Thank you so much, Alistair, and glad to see you highlight the shared dream, if you will, of a more European approach on reusables. At the end of today, I'll highlight one of the developments that we're doing to make that a reality.
Yes.
But I would certainly argue that the Reset company is one of those key actors in there, and I think your work on standardization, for example, is actually very valuable. And I would certainly imagine plenty of people outside France would like to, take those learnings. So, opening any questions that there currently are in the chat, I see a question from Gina. She asks if you have an opinion on deposit systems versus depositless. So, what is your experience or opinion on that?
Well, depositless meaning without financial deposits.
I would imagine.
So what we've seen is that it dramatically increases the return rates. So in term deposit is, for me, absolutely necessary for the model to be economically viable, because you will give a huge incentive to consumers to give back their packaging. You need to be careful though on the amount of deposits, as we've talked a bit with our German partners that haven't been able to increase the deposit for the past years, because once you set a price, it's tough to change. So you need to think quite a bit about the amount. But yeah, for me, it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, with this, you already answered the second question from Terry for quite a bit. I'll read it out for you. What your opinion is about the height of the deposit value. You already said it's difficult to change once you fix it. So it makes it even more important to have an idea of what value should you put it. There's big differences, Terry writes, between the various markets.
I think if you're starting from scratch, you should put it high and then lower it, because you can't go the other way around, that's for sure. And it should be more than the price of the product you're buying. So it should be, there's a ratio that needs to be found. I see another question. Do I have time to answer it, or is it over?
Yeah, you have 1 more minute, so then we need to switch to the presentation of Shu.
So should I read it? Or
Oh, sorry, I can read it out as well. Alexis is asking how it will be possible to reach the 5% target in 2023 regarding reusable implementation. Is that realistic?
My answer will be a kind of, in France we say normal answer, so it's in between. It is realistic on depending on how you calculate the 5%. And so that's kind of an issue that ADEME is working on right now. We have something that's called l'Observatoire du Réemploi. So it's an organization that's going to measure the percentage. If you take B2B packaging, it could decrease the number of the percentage. Also, C2 is working quite extensively on packaging that could be turned to reuse in 2023. In my opinion, it's quite hard. It's a very, very high target. So I guess we'll see. Everyone's working quite hard to make it happen. But once again, you don't have very definitive deterrence from the law to make it happen in January 2023. So it might be during the year more than 1st of January.
Right. Yeah, we'll certainly be looking with a lot of curiosity and interest to how this will move forward. I mean, in the Netherlands, as I said in the beginning, we just now slowly start to introduce or explore on a retail level these type of models of reusable packaging beyond the brown beer bottle that is our pride, if you will, on reusable packaging. Is the one that does quite well, but almost the only one, I would say, for consumer packaging. So certainly I would agree with Alexis. This will be very interesting to see how that works. And the technical bit on how to measure it, I'm sure we'll find a way. But well, thank you so much, Alistair. Just out of curiosity, the report that you're mentioning that you did in/with Citeo, is that something that people could find on your website, perhaps, or could they drop you a message?
So actually, in the presentation, there are 2 links. One for the 3R strategy that concerns reduce, reuse, and recycle, plus reincorporate strategy for France. So you can find in that one reuse targets for 42 different categories, and the CTO one is actually online available. also in the link. Just one small warning on the CTO catalog is that it's not definitive. It still needs to be challenged and worked on with different stakeholders. So it's specifications and indications, but it's not definitive.
Okay, well, exciting things happening, and again, our speakers are, I would imagine, also available for some questions if some more things would pop up in the chat here, or potentially outside. They can reach you with anything that comes into their minds, right?
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much, Alistair. We'll see you again in the panel discussion, and I would now ask Shu to open her camera and microphone. And we have the presentation available. Good afternoon, Shu. Can you hear me correctly?
Yes, I can hear you. And you too?
Excellent. And I hear you too. So unless somebody in the audience says, hey, sound isn't working, I would think that we are good to go. Your presentation is ready. So it's an honor to have you here today, not only as co-founder and CEO of Panda, but also as president of the Réseau Consigne. So let that be a small introduction of yourself, and then the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Merci.
It was a pleasure to listen to François and Alistair. We all know each other when we work in Reuse in France, and also the next one that will come. And for me, so I'm Shu, and I'm here to introduce you my two activities with two different organizations, the Réseau Consigne and then Panda. First, I will begin with the Réseau Consigne. It's an NGO where I have the honor to have the president seat for now 1 year and a half. And Réseau Consigne, we gather private actors, companies and associations working on reusable packaging in France. And Réseau Consigne was created 10 years ago. And was strongly supported by Zero Waste France that helped its creation. Before 2019, Réseau Consigne was only focused on reusable glass bottles. It was very specific because in France it was only this kind of reuse, only glass bottles reuse. And now, since 2019, every kind of reusable packaging is represented. There are the B2B transport packaging that we talk about later with Panda. We have food service packaging for takeaway and delivery, cosmetics packaging, bulk food packaging, and all the reusable packaging you can find is today represented in the Réseau Consigne. And the mission and the objective of Réseau Consigne is to promote and support the development of reusable packaging system in France by helping mostly its members to grow and scale. The actions are very varied, and I can just tell you some. The most important are, of course, all the communication and marketing around the reuse system, packaging system. We do lobbying too to change laws. As we said before, there is a French law, AGEC, and we try to get it's more and more favorable to reuse, of course. And we also find matchings for business opportunities between members or with partners, and we develop partnerships too. And the final goal is really to increase the positive environmental impact of the packaging by reducing waste, of course, and resource consumption, and with efficient reusable packaging system. We have now more than 200 members, mostly in France, but also in Switzerland and Belgium. And the profiles are very varied too. We have, of course, reusable packaging system operators, but also suppliers, packaging suppliers, for example, or washing machine suppliers, drinks and food producers, and others, and more. But we all work together in the Réseau Consigne to further packaging reuse. And now I will talk about my own company, Panda. And we are a reusable packaging operator for B2B transport packaging only. I founded Panda with 2 associates in 2018, and we are for the moment the only project on B2B packaging in the Réseau Consigne. Every one of the others are for the B2C packaging, bottles, or for the food service, and so on. And before Panda, I created a restaurant in Paris after graduating from an engineering school. And I managed the restaurant from 2014 and 2018. And the biggest problem that I experienced, and you can see on the photo, was the quantity of packaging waste that I had to throw every day. There was the packaging you can see on the picture on the 3 pictures, the cardboard boxes, wooden crates, polystyrene foam boxes for fish food, for example, that came from my suppliers. And I was really, really fed up with this packaging waste. That's why I decided to create Panda to bring a real solution to restaurants like mine. In 2018, the topic of reusable packaging was pretty unknown. When we were mentioning reuse, people were answering us about recycling. So just we couldn't understand each other. And since then, it's changed a lot in France, thanks in particular to the AGEC law that we saw before, that sets reuse goals and plastic waste reduction in France. And the challenges in B2B are very different than in B2C packaging, because in the B2B packaging, the packaging are hidden from the public. You don't know, I think nobody knows that in a small restaurant, for example, you have every day 2 bins of garbage bins that are filled with packaging, supplies packaging waste. Nobody knows that, and it's very huge amount of waste. So there is no marketing issue in B2B, or very few. And this is obviously the financial and economic issue that is the most important for our clients. Recently, the costs of single-use packaging have increased a lot for cardboard and polystyrene foam, especially, and lead our clients to look at reuse systems, but it's only because of the financial and economic issue that they want to change. And what we do in Panda is that we provide a turnkey B2B reuse packaging service. Our clients are the food service suppliers. They are also producers, retailers, and not the restaurants. We work with the companies that are upstream from the restaurants and the shops. They are suppliers. And we call our service Turnkey One because we manage for our clients all the different steps of a reuse system. We provide them with the appropriate reusable crates and with the good stock of them. Then we manage the collection of the crates once they are used once. And then we wash them and give them back to the clients. And all the movements of the crates are tracked in our tracking app. to optimize the reuse rate and reduce the loss rate. And we also developed a new service that is an operational consulting offer on the question of how to move from single-use packaging to a reusable one. And we work with all kinds of companies and associations, from small cities to big companies, and on different kinds of packaging, not only B2B packaging on the consulting offer. And our next steps and challenges, are, I think for most of us, are scaling and reaching profitability. Our activity today is mostly present in the region of Paris, where we are based, and we already have clients all over France, but not a lot. So the first challenge is to really implement ourselves in all the country of France by increasing our clients, the numbers of our clients, and our impact outside of Paris. We need for that resources, of course, and to create and provide new offers, because the profiles of our clients are slightly different outside of Paris. There are, for example, more producers and retailers and less wholesalers. In Paris, for example, we work a lot with wholesalers, but outside it's more producers. And for profitability, Alistair talked just before about we need normalization and massification to reach a certain level in France that will bring us to profitability. And we also need to have strong partnerships for washing and transportation to ensure all the profitability of the system, of the reuse system. Thank you. I don't know if you have questions, and you have, if you want to go further with me, my number and email. Thank you.
Microphone is working, yes? Thank you so much, Sue, for your wonderful presentation. I think you are, from all steps in the supply chain, you come into contact and have some very good ideas about reusable packaging, starting from your own restaurant and seeing, this is the signal that your time is up, so excellent timing. But having seen firsthand the amount of single-use waste for business-to-business applications, I think it's well, not per se overlooked, but I noticed there's a lot of focus on business-to-consumer packaging in the reusable packaging area, and business-to-consumer are sometimes overlooked. I mean, there's of course lots of solutions like pellets, etc., but it's very interesting to see your experience from the restaurant floor all the way up to now, basically, having a solution invented or implemented, including consultancy services. So I would certainly encourage everybody to have a look at your system and get in contact if interesting. I think we have time for one quick question, if that is okay with you. There's a question from Eliza, I'm not sure how to pronounce, apologies. How do you handle the end of life of your Panda box? What is the route?
Yes, the end of life is the Panda bags. I think we can use them more than 100 times, and we aim like 300. So the end of life is a few years after the first use of a Panda bag. And then for the end of life, we already had some crates that were broken, I think from 2019 we had only 5, I think, and the 5 are in our storage, and we keep them, and when we have like a half and pallets, we will send it to a plastic manufacturer to recycle them.
Okay, recycling into new packaging, yes?
Yes.
Okay, well, that sounds like a smart solution. And obviously, we hope that reusables will make many, many trips before we have to recycle them. But having an end-of-life solution would be a good thing. Yeah, thanks for the replies, says Eliza. One quick question from Anya, and then we do need to move on. Anya is wondering what the difference is with your Pandobak with the Bacs Bleu that they use in Belgium.
Yeah, it's very similar. The difference is that today all the bac bleu or bac vert, we have green one in France too, are used in big retailers, and we provide the service for all the others, like restaurants, like small shops in cities. And that's the difference, that the model and the idea is the same, but we don't have the same beneficiaries. The final beneficiary is different. We aim more small shops and restaurants.
Okay, thank you so much. We have one or two questions popping in, but we need to save them for the panel discussion because there's two more speakers that are anxiously waiting to tell their story. So, merci beaucoup, Shu, for
Thank
your
you.
story, and we'll see you later in the panel discussion.
Yes.
Thank you. Then we have the next presentation in the screen, if I'm correctly, and therefore asking Nicolas to switch on his camera and microphone. Yes, excellent. So thank you, Nicolas, for joining. You can hear me? Yes, I think we can hear you. So introducing Nicolas Daprigny, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, who is a co-founder of Bout à Bout, and I will let you explain your company.
All right. So what we started, it was almost 6 years ago. Actually, it has been a bit crazy journey. So when we started, we were only really few initiatives in France trying to addressing the reuse of glass bottles mainly. At this time, when we were speaking about trying to collect bottles and reuse them, for more people, it was like a very positive initiative. They couldn't have any business on this. And it's true that like all the difficulties we had were huge. I mean, we didn't get the how to say the usage. Like we lost the habits of bringing back our packagings. For every retailers or supermarkets, you don't have any deposit system. So it has been a lot of work also to be sure that it can work, even if we know that the ecological benefits are maybe important. So you already know that reuse, if you've got a return rate sufficient, is a benefit. What has also started to change in France since some years ago, and now that before it was like, okay, we have to reuse packaging only for ecological purpose. And now, talking with industrials, there is a huge stress on the glass market. Of course, the Ukraine war has made the things more difficult even. But now it's not only like the marketers trying to bring reuse in their products. It's also like the people in the company buying the bottles who try to secure the fact that we get these bottles to put their production in it. Okay. I'm sorry, it has been really wild. I've spoken English. So now there is many initiatives in France. This is a really good thing because reuse is really a local thing. It's not getting from the big industrials right now. It's mainly local producers, brewers, who didn't take in account the fact that it will be more expensive at the beginning, and they just decided to go. So we started to bring back this filière, I don't know how to say. Yeah, so we started locally to start it back again over. And now these associations are getting much more structured, and we are getting in a consolidation area. And some big, this is something I really believe in. There won't be so many players on this market. There will be maybe 4 or 5, because right now we are talking with local producers, but we are talking more and more with national industrial, which are looking for services at the national scale. So if we don't find some harmonization between us, and we won't be able to address them. Okay. So what we do actually is that we support producers to use the good bottles using the right label, and then we promise to consumers that they can bring back their bottles in any point where they bought it. And then we do all the supply. We collect it, we sort it, and then we send it to the washing machine, and then we sell it back to the producers. So the business model we have is basically what has been presented before. We try to get all the cost must be inferior to the price we sell back the bottle. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, this is what I explained, and so also there is something I want to insist on, is that there is no deposit right now. It's only based on voluntary contributions. The French state has not decided to set a value on this packaging, and because no one wants to be the first, no one, any big players will do it. So right now it's only voluntary. The thing that you can see, for instance, in Germany, where you get your money back, is more likely to not happen in France. It may be more a kind of reward with a smaller value if you bring back your bottle. So, for instance, instead of getting 20 cents, you will get just 5 cents to spend. Just getting back like 4 years ago, the first thing we did locally was to define like the few bottles or every producer has to use. Only one for wine, only one for the soft, only one for beer, and so on. So standardizations is the only way to get the cost low enough so the reuse bottles are competitive with the new ones and the light ones. And even in 2022, for the last 2 bottles, you see the one for milk, soup, and juice. It is still not decided which one we can use. It's something difficult to. It's very difficult to source the good bottles that you can get from different glass producers. And I will go on with also something else, which is really a pain. So we do crazy thing in 2022, but it's still very difficult to get labels that get removed in the washing machine. The producers do not use anymore the cold glue labels, and they mostly use adhesive labels. So right now, we did some research. This is a picture from an experiment we did with CTO to see what are the parameters which impact the removing of the label. And this is really not so, how to say, straight. Okay, I will move on to make it short. And also, right now we can see that different players are getting back to the supply of rivers. It's something that has been lost. So right now we are looking for carriers which are flexible enough to bring things and getting back, and or doing some manual dispatch. So really, it's not something so easy to find in the different territories. Okay, that was a meeting we did with all the other projects to try to create a common label. Oh, I didn't spoke about the common label. Waited. Yeah, because when we all started, each region has his own label, and then we decided to adopt one national one. So it means that if a producer in the south of France sells his bottle in our region, we are able to, and the consumers is able to identify it, and then we can reuse it locally. This has been a big change. That was only, I think, last year or the year before. So this is something very new. Okay, and one last thing is that this is also moving very fast right now in France. But the washing machine you see on the very left was one of the last two ones in France which were still working for how to say, like people who needed, which needed some washing. It was not for internal use. It was also for external prestations. And right now, so some new washing machines are getting available in France. But that was something really limiting us from getting big players, because the quality was not good enough. That's why we are also right now getting some funds to buy our own washing machine. Some big players are still waiting for it, and it's really frustrating that we can't turn them into the reuse system because just of this missing machine. All right, and then I will. That was really a big picture, but I will make it short and stop it here.
Well, thank you so much, Nicolas. I would like to learn a lot from your initiative, because I think it's brilliant. I think it's an extremely good idea to look at all the, particularly glass packaging that is being thrown away currently after one use. Because as you obviously will realize, glass is very heavy and takes a lot of energy to remelt into new bottles. So yeah, I, for one, am following your initiative with a lot of interest, and I really hope it will be implemented in many more regions and many more countries. In fact, I would hope to launch a pilot here in the Netherlands to explore exactly the same. So, perhaps I can have a chat with you one-on-one at some point to understand your learnings and to see what is possible. But also in the chat, there's quite a few questions, but I would suggest we use your particular example as a starting point in the panel discussion, if that's okay. And then we have a panel discussion towards the end, because first we have a presentation from Carrefour that will also shine a light on how retailers think about this. And I would certainly like to hear Carrefour's opinion about reuse in general, but also your system. So thank you for now, Nicolas. And we will talk to you in 10 minutes, yes? Thank you. And I see already your camera, so that is excellent, Ludivine. Thanks for having you here. Brilliant that you could make time to join us. Ludivine, I'm gonna try and pronounce your name. Ludivine.
It's very, very hard. Exactly.
Well, I had French in high school, but I forgot a lot of it. So apologies there. So you are our she is our project manager for Carrefour, one of the big players, obviously in France, and one of the more active supermarkets also in reusable packaging. So I will, not steal away time from your presentation.
Okay, great. Can you hear me well? Yeah.
Yeah, it is fine. Thank you so much. Great. I will see you in 10 minutes.
Okay, thanks. Sorry for my voice. I am sick, so I have a weird voice, but I'm here. So thanks a lot. I am Ludivine, working in the CSR department at Carrefour on different topics, but mostly on reuse system and so on Loop. I will explain you briefly what we are doing and of course be able to answer to all your questions. First of all, I just want to explain you in which way the reuse system is part of our main strategy in terms of packaging. So we have a strong strategy in terms of packaging, and Carrefour is very, very committed on that part because we want to offer a new experience in terms of packaging to our customers with different key elements. We want to offer them an experience with the least possible packaging. So we have a commitment on 20,000 tons of safe packaging before 2025. We also have some objectives on bulk experiences or also on recyclable packaging. But today we'll focus on the reuse experience that we want to offer to our customers. So we have a target of 500 shops equipped by a reuse system by 2025 with 1,000 reusable solution. So basically, these are our main objectives, and the implementation of these objectives allowed us to launch the reuse approach in retail, because it's not that easy to launch to relaunch the reuse system in retail, and therefore it helps us to anticipate the regulations that will increasingly push us in this direction. So all the previous speakers has explained you the different aspects between the AGEC law and the 3R decree, so I will not be long on that part, but our objectives are fully in line with the French law, and at Carrefour we hope that the law will push us more and more, and we want to be prepared before the law will oblige us. So I will try to be brief and to explain you the development of reusable solution at Carrefour, and I will be focused today on Loop. Loop is an in-store deposit project who wants to bring the deposit back into our daily life in partnership with Loop. Loop is a company, and we have first launched Loop in e-commerce 3 years ago with key suppliers, and during 1 year we have tested, learned a lot, and also gathered a lot of feedback from the clients and also from our teams at Carrefour, and then we have took the decision to launch the first store equipped by Loop in 2020, and so now you can see the test is now live in 20 shops in Paris and near Paris, and I hope that we will talk during the Q&A session about in which way we can be local or national. So we have Loop in 20 stores, in proxy, in supermarkets and in hypermarkets. And as you can see, you have dedicated corners to loop with loop products in shop. So the customer can buy the product with a deposit. Then he consumes the product at home and come back to the shop to return the empty packaging. And he's credited with the deposit amount in a dedicated application. It sounds very simple like that, but he has taken a lot of time to test. And so then when the empty container is returned, Loop washed it and sent it again to the suppliers. So the suppliers can fill it to send it again to the stores. So it's a loop. And for the moment, we have put 40 references of national brand that you can see here. And the national brands are among the key product of French daily consumption. For example, I have bring the best sell product, which is Coca, which is Nutella, or for example with Coca. You have also well-known brands of water such as San Pellegrino or Vitel, and the waters are also products that are easy to offer with a reuse system because the products are the same as for the out-of-home sector. And you also have some products for breakfast, also for baby. For example, with Bledina. I don't know if you know this brand, but it's a brand for baby food. So basically, this is where we are today, and we know that to attract customers, various conditions must be met for the packaging. We must have like a packaging that consumers want to display and make visible. For example, we know that the Ricoré or Nesquik packaging are used then to be visible in the home of the clients. We also need to have some packaging that preserved well the product. And for example, with Coca, the clients are saying that they prefer to drink Coca in a glass bottle rather than in a plastic bottle. And also, we truly need to have a packaging that can be washed many times, and it's very different between the container. For example, you can wash between 10 and 50 times the container. It depends on the product, if it's glass, if it's inox, etc. So we are testing all these products, and we want to extend the range of products that the clients can meet in store. And basically, today our main ambition is to extend the project. And in 2 years, we have tested a lot, learned a lot, and we still have big challenges to face because reuse is not yet integrated into the consumption habits of the customers and also into the daily work routine in our stores. So there are several blocking points I will say that we are working on. We want to increase the number of stores, as you can see there, because we know that to convert as many clients as possible, we need to deploy Loop in more stores. So we have the objective of 500 stores before 2025. So for this year, we have an objective of 100 stores because we want to allow more people to test it and not to only keep the Loop project for a very small number of people. We also want to increase the number of products that we have. So we want to have more and more products that answer to more consumption needs, because our goal is that you can go in a Carrefour store and check all your list of needs with a reusable or bulk solution. So we want to have 1,000 products in reusable packaging before 2025, and so having 200 products this year. So as you can see, that this is a big objective, and all our teams internally are fully committed to make this objective realizable. And we also have other points that we are working on, such as the price, because we really want having a price for reused product that is the same price or less expensive price than the product in its usual packaging. So we are working on that, and for the moment this is still a challenge, but we are working on that part. So just for the content now, for the containers. And also we have another point, which is to make the information on how to bring the empty container and how to recover the deposit very simple to understand. And it's not an easy one also, because you have to explain with a lot of pedagogy to our clients with a limited place in stock. But we do believe in the return of the deposit system in the retail world, and we want to be the retailer leader on that topic. So this is why we were pushing Loop, and we are trying to do our best to launch all the ecosystem. And we know that there are many blocking points on the project, but we want to test it. We want to learn from the clients what is good, what is not good for them, and then to adapt. And we are always doing that. For example, we know that this is a huge test in retail. And to answer to one of the questions on the chat that I have see previously, on my side, I think that's one of the big challenge of the reuse system is to have the national brands fully committed to embark all the local suppliers, and also to have the local suppliers fully committed also. And I don't think that the reuse system must be only for local producers or for national brands, but I think that both can be fully committed in putting the reuse system at the heart of the daily consumption of the French people. And I have finished. I have tried to make it very fast because I know that you are the timekeeper.
Thank you so much, Ludivine, and applauding your efforts to still be here while you have with your voice. So I'll try not to ask too many questions, even though I think many people in the audience have quite some interest in what Carrefour is doing. And one of the reasons why we asked about this to set up this webinar is because I think, and you have proven this, a lot is happening on reuse in France. And for your idea, in the Netherlands, just a week or 10 days ago, our largest retailer opened a refill shelf of about 10 meters, which was the first. So it's 2022, and we're just beginning this journey. And you are planning by 2025 to have 500 stores. So that's big example.
Big objective.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm hoping that Nicolas is still here. He messaged that he has an emergency. He might have to drop out. So I would almost invite all of the speakers to open their microphones. Nicolas, you're still here. Let's see. So I was just kind of wondering, because one of the things that you mentioned in your presentation, Nicolas, about dedicated reuse logistics, which kind of struck me beyond the topic like cold washable glue, so many important topics, but I could imagine with the plans that Carrefour has and the initiatives like Bout à Bout, there should be a room for cooperation, I would say, to combine transportation, for example. Is this something that Carrefour is looking into, or perhaps even Bout à Bout is already trying to organize this in your own region or beyond? I would actually ask all panel members to open their microphones, because otherwise
Can I start?
Yes, please.
We haven't spoke yet. But sure, like the approach are really very different but very complementary. Like Ludivine are only speaking about big industrial which are using packaging to their own, and what we believe in is for local and regional industrials to use standards packaging that they can buy and sell to each other. We will need both. But what is sure is that for instance, in a Carrefour supermarket, actually, this is what we believe. We won't have 2 or 3 different deposit systems. So at least we will have one that we will be one deposit system which will need to accept, for instance, a Coca-Cola bottles and a local producer bottle. And on this point, for sure, the logistics we have to deploy, Carrefour or us, have to talk together. I don't know how to say.
Yeah, and just maybe to complete, even if we are fully committed with the steps of Loop, we know that there are a lot of other business models that are currently existing in France, and we for example, we have tested with Bledina, so the French brand, for baby product. We have tested in one store in Brive-la-Gaillarde, so it's not near Paris. It's in the center of France. Dedicated machine to bring only the Bledina product, and we also have tested in the north of France something with La Déconsigne. Which is one of the actors of the reuse only for beer products. So we are open to test, and we are of course a big retailer, and we are of course working with national suppliers, but we are also a lot. We have also a lot of interest into testing local interest, because we think that, for example, in the north of France and in the south of France, it's not the same type of clients or same type of product that we can use, and I think that it can be, of course, something that we can discuss together.
Yeah, that will be very good. I mean, it's also one of the topics coming up in the chat. I see some discussion already about should it be big national systems or local operators like Bout à Bout. And I think particularly for France, that is, of course, very large compared to the Netherlands, at least. It makes sense to have both, I would think. Because I think it was it you, Alistair, that said after a certain amount of kilometers, 200 or 300, it almost economically, but also environmentally doesn't make sense to have deposit systems driving trucks around. So, in the Netherlands, 300 kilometers will get you pretty much everywhere. In France, obviously, it will not. So then it makes sense to have local systems like Bout à Bout.
Yeah, I think the key here is, as we said earlier, it's interoperability. So it's true for within Europe, but it's also true within France. So Ludivine talked about difference in the specificity of the north versus the south, and local actors versus national players. I think it all goes together. You just need to normalize the washing systems, harmonize the logistics and the return systems, and get together. It's also quite a different mindset, being cooperative and non-competitive, still being competitive on other subjects. So it's the whole challenge here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, I think. And so shared logistics is a logical topic, I would say. So to have national systems collaborating with regional systems, but also competitors perhaps sharing infrastructure. The same, one of the things that came into my head was around the cold wash glue that you mentioned, Nicola, being quite a problem, that you see brand owners moving from cold wash glue that you can quite easily, I guess, with dishwashers move to perhaps even plastic-based labels. And I was just kind of wondering if this is a tendency that we will be able to reverse, or something that you, Alistair, or maybe even Shu has noticed on business-to-business crates, where, if you communicate something on the packaging, it needs to stay there until the consumer has finished it, right? And then the problem comes when you wash it. So I was just kind of wondering if you have any learnings there which I guess is basically marketing on one hand, so communicating with your customer, versus logistics and administration on the other. Nicola?
Go ahead, Nico.
Yeah, and actually this is a big challenge because this is a risk. So right now it can be fancy to bring reusable packaging on the market, but we are the people assuming all the costs, and we only get our money back when we sell it. So if only a third of what we collect are saleable, it's a big loss for us. And there is something also, is that when you bring your bottles in the washing machine, at the very end, you remember the pictures, you can't really see which were the producers which use it. So we need to bring some industrial process to be able to link it and to ensure that the quality is fully respected.
And
so that's why also, and it has been, it can be, if there is no master on all the supply to be sure that the one pushing the products can really be washed, that they are well carried, it can really get a mess, and of course the model won't be competitive at all, for sure.
Yeah, so it's in the interest of everybody in the supply chain, almost, actually consumer as well, because in the end, if the price of packaging goes down, it's in the end the price of the product.
maybe
So I was just kind of wondering whether Réseau Consigne, for example, with its network of, I think you said, 200 actors in packaging reuse systems, is that something that you guys, for example, discuss about, like harmonization of glue types, or perhaps even other types of
Yes, there is a group that works on it. So that's a big problem, particularly for bottles, because you need, as you said, marketing, but also the practicity before washing. You have to wash it easily. So there is a group that works on it, and it's not easy. And for Panda bag, we have two problematics, because the one is that we need a very strong glue to put the traceability, the tracking of the crates, because every one of our crates has a unique identity. So we need that this identity just is very permanent. It's the idea. So we work on the glue that is permanent, and it's not easy. And we work with also suppliers to have the information of the product that will change at each use. So we need to put it down from the crate very easily before washing. And this too, we are looking for a few solutions with partners. And we work on it with our clients too. So we go at night at our clients' storage room to test and to test the the labels and everything, and the glue. And that's nice. So yes, it's a big work on it.
So we can see this work coming also to the Netherlands when we start implementing more and more of these models. So that's good to bear in mind. And one of the topics I try to push for, to harmonize and standardize as much as we can before we start implementing reusables. And that actually is also
maybe to add on this. Sorry, Marcel. Maybe to add on this, on what was discussed, and I think Réseau Consigne and True are also working on it right now, but what was discussed in the standardization of packaging, especially for bottles, was to implement a differentiation between single-use bottles and reusable bottles, and trace the bottles with something that would be in the glass and not on the label, so that you can have a removable label more easily. So that's something that you need to put everyone around the table to agree also on this development.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm just conscious of time, want to at least, if all of you have a few more minutes, we can, have a few more questions that are in the chat, but there might be members in the audience that do need to leave. So at least I want to thank the audience for joining. And if there's any questions, please let us know. You will get a mailing afterwards that will tell you where the recording of today's webinar can be found on KDV's website. Is the same as the presentations. And also, just in case I don't tell you later on, dear speakers, a big thank you to all of you for making time and presenting your insights. I still personally have many questions, but I'm kind of hoping we might somewhere in the future have a one-on-one and discuss a few items. And perhaps it might also be a good opportunity here now to the thing that I hinted at in the beginning, and that you also said, Alistair, together with an organization in France and Germany. Our community of practice on reusable packaging has been building a European community for reusable packaging with the title Planet Reuse, which will launch in the next month or two, which would then also be an open call for people to join and see if we can share more like we're doing here on a European level, these type of insights. I think it's crucial and very valuable. So thank you for those of us that need to leave the discussion. If there are a few more questions and some of the speakers might have a couple more minutes to answer them in the chat, that would still be a possibility. Any burning last questions, I guess, which would come to my mind, and that is also in the chat one or twice, is the thing of urban areas and reusables versus rural areas. Again, the Netherlands being quite densely populated, transport distances are smaller. In France, you would have a big cluster in big cities like Paris, obviously, where transportation is a lot smaller. But I'm very curious how these things are in more rural areas where you perhaps need to have far more transport distances. Is that something that is an issue, or perhaps I'm wrong here?
Maybe I can start answering with insights we have had from some retailers, clients that are not Carrefour, actually. So maybe you can guess who. In larger rural areas, there was something that was counterintuitive, is that people in the big stores were giving back quite a lot of reusable packaging, because they would come with their cars and in the trunk have the reusable packaging. Whereas in urban areas, you have the opposite problem. So it's more available, but then you need the space in the store, which can be quite a big difficulty. I think today, Ludivine was talking about the number of products. So 42 products versus 500 products will be a different issue to address. And I think that's we can agree there's a lot of work to do in urban areas too. So I think intuitively, it might not be that big of an issue being in rural areas.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting insight. I hadn't even thought of it. Although we would see the same in the Netherlands, particularly with the issue that you mentioned, the space in the back of the store. If I would look at an average Dutch supermarket and imagine that they would have to collect 1,000 reusable items like they do in Carrefour, we would have big discussions with them, because they are so tiny compared to, like the bigger hypermarchés, that I'm not sure we would be able to do it at the moment even. So
but you have quite a good advantage, which is you have deposit schemes for recycling that you can use also for reuse. So you can also mutualize recycling schemes and reuse schemes at some point of the value chain, which allows to reduce the cost for the supermarket. At least the Albertine near my place has one. So I don't know if it's how extensively it's brought to supermarkets, but it can be used.
Yeah, good point. And so one of the questions also way earlier in the chat when you did your presentation, Ludivine, I think, is out of all the Carrefour supermarkets in France, how many are, let's say, in larger cities, and then size-wise, where are the biggest ones? So the real hypermarchés where you would have actually room to have a separate loop collection system, a separate, a lot of brands developing their own return device. In the Netherlands, we just don't have the room for this, but you might have a bit more.
Yeah, and it's very different, because, for example, in Proxy, we have very small stores, and it's a big issue to put like the reuse system, because you need to have a place, and you need to make it very profitable, because you're removing some products that are sold normally. And in hypermarkets, you have a lot of space, and also the clients are coming to the supermarkets or to the hypermarkets with their car. So it's very useful when you're bringing, for example, glass bottles, or I don't know, like, yeah, for example, the baby product. So it's very different because in proxy. So for example, in Paris, it's a bit difficult to, for example, to bring this in your own bag. So you have very different specificities, but both are very interesting. And we are currently working on all the different aspects because we do not want to only have a loop in Paris to only keep loop for the Parisians, because the reuse system is for all the clients.
That would indeed be the ideal. Thank you. Thank you. Very useful insights. And in terms of also guarding your own agendas, obviously, dear speakers, I would perhaps ask all of you for one final piece of advice to our audience and anybody watching the recordings afterwards. If you would want to introduce a reusable packaging model in the Netherlands or whatever country our audience is in, what would be your key advice? And Ludivine, you have the microphone open, so maybe you can begin.
Yeah, I'm going first. I would say that the first thing is that you have to test it very smallly in one store, and to make it very local, so with a local system, etc. And then when you are gathering all the feedback, you can deploy it and scale it, but don't think big for the first time. On Carrefour, we are still working on small lines, and this is the way we are working. We're working on the small lines, and then we are scaling it. So don't think big for the first time. Okay.
Very good advice. I think we will try to follow this up. And then in the light of the motto "Ladies First," I would ask maybe you, Shu, if you could have a final word of advice for our audience with your several hats of experience from both the restaurant and the president of Reusable Consigne and co-founder of Panda. What key advice for us?
There are a lot of advice, the same as Ludivine, that's for sure. Reusable system, you have to change a lot of things in the process. So you have to test and see what are the problematics you have to resolve, and then work with good partners. That's very important. We can see that you can't do by yourself, I think, everything alone in the reuse system. For us, for example, we began with saying that we will do everything, that the transportation, the washing, and finally, it's better to work with experts in each field. So we work with transportation experts and washing experts, and I think it's the real system. You have to be a lot of people working together, which each one with an expertise. I think it's the good way to put resilience and sustainable real system.
I think that's a realization indeed that people will start to discover, and particularly because it's a rather new model, having need for different expertise compared to single-use packaging. Thank you, Shu. And it was my fault, actually. I probably should have asked Nicolas to go first, because he did text us saying that he needs to drop out. So if you're watching this afterwards, Nicolas, apologies. Thank you for being here. And then, Alistair, the word is to you for the last wise words of
Yes, I think it's mainly what Shu and Ludivine said. I think collaboration is the key. You can't do it by yourself. You need to really co-create the system and collaborate on it. Reuse can't happen. It can't happen just on your own. You can't do it on your own. It's something. So it's a whole new mindset, and it's really something that I think you're doing really well in the community with KIDV. So, I mean, keep going. Don't despair. It's a long journey, and it's a trajectory. And as Levin said, step by step, we'll be able to make it happen. And on a European level, I hope so. So we can
Indeed.
all collaborate on this.
I do hope the same. Thank you so much, Alistair. Thank you, everybody. Those that are still here and that do have a minute to let us know your thoughts on this webinar and any advice for those that follow or this actual one, please look at the very quick survey, but also obviously you are free to drop us a line and share your thoughts. So thank you, speakers, once more. We will be in contact, I hope, and we will see each other in Reuse Country in 2025 in many, many stores in France and outside.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Marcel. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Have a nice day, everyone.